Welcome to Dance Music Production Volume 8, Fundamental4 Melody. As I suspect many of you know, our Fundamental series are dedicated to unravelling the basic principles and knowledge you need if you want to become a proficient music producer. And this next DVD in the series is the penultimate volume for discussing music theory. And basically for this DVD, what we're going to do is we're going to be examining the principles of melody. Now, melody could be viewed as the final link in the musical chain. After the drums, the bass and the harmony, the melody in a way completes the music and helps to tie it all together to cement that final idea, that final tonality of your music. Now, because melody is that final link in the theory chain, the element that binds all the music together, both melody and harmony and in a lot of cases, I suppose, the bass, they're all inextricably linked to one another. And basically what that does is that means that as we move through this DVD, we'll be discussing and revisiting topics that we discussed in both Fundamental 2 and Fundamental 3. And in some instances, we'll also be looking at more theory when we're working with harmony and bass. I must stress here that isn't because I've forgotten to mention theory in the previous DVDs. It's simply because we're at the final stage of that theoretical ladder, and all the theory we've covered in the second and third Fundamental series, some of which may have seemed a bit disparate back then, is now going to tie together into the bigger picture, into the completed music piece. I must admit I've received a few emails asking why I haven't discussed such and such a thing, such as the circle of fifths when talking about chords, but I've spent a long time organising and writing this Fundamental series in order to break it down into more digestible chunks. I've tried to break it down into this theory for bass, this theory for harmony, and now for this DVD, whilst we are going to concentrate on melody, we're also going to tie all the theory together so things you may feel I've missed out will be covered in this DVD. Now, saying that, the whole purpose of this DVD has been to teach you the theory from a dance music perspective. And although dance music does utilise music theory, there is some that doesn't, and vice versa. For example, metrical dissonance and ambiguity that we covered back in Fundamental 1. Now, that's not something that's been found in musical theory, and it's actually dance music that's bringing that into the musical theory field. So again, I must stress that what I'm teaching you here is what I feel is important for the dance musician. There's books and books and books written on music theory, and if you want to write a classical piece of music, by all means buy those books and learn more. But if your only intention is to produce and write dance music, there's no need to go to such great lengths. Now, when we talk about melody in dance music, the first thing that pops into most people's heads is that the typical hands in the air trance tune with its lead riffs echoing out across the track. And whilst we are going to examine how those are conceived and written here, melody stretches a lot further than that, and its echoes can be heard in all forms of dance music, not just trance. You're going to find that all genres of house music, electro, bassline and even techno and minimal will utilise some kind of melody, but it's often in a far subtler way than you imagine. For example, techno, it uses drums as a chromatic instrument, and melodies are written in drum timbres rather than in lead instruments. It's the same with bass lines. If you look at the bassline genre, the melody still exists in the music. They're simply written in a bass instrument than in a typical lead instrument. Now, I'm not saying there that dance music should be full of complex melodies. It shouldn't, well, unless it's euphoric trance, but the melody and the chords you employ should be determined by the play you expect. For example, clubs require less melody and harmony than a radio station does. If you have too much melodic movement or a progression that's too long, it won't last well in a club. Club music relies on very simple repetition, and if you get too complex, it's not going to be played in a club. But that same approach doesn't work for radio. For that, you need to employ a more melodic stance, because the more melodic the music is, the more emotional content it can convey. So basically, any good dance track should be a very careful mix of repetition and melody. And that means basically that you have to have a good grasp of the theory behind writing melodies so you can mix them with that dance music edge. So with that in mind, we'll move on to our first session. For this, I think what we need to do is we need to first examine one of the most important tools in music, and that's a circle of fifths.